All right, it's Friday, so you know that means we've got another edition of Foundation Friday. Welcome back, everyone. We've got a great episode lined up today, full of stories about how the Humana Foundation is helping communities thrive. With me, as always, Chris. Chris, what have we got on the agenda today?
Hey, JD, good to be here. We've got three big stories this time, all surrounding one thing we all care about deeply, and that's community. First, we'll talk about Humana Community Day, our annual day of service that brought thousands of Humana employees together to give back. It shows what's possible when we roll up our sleeves and serve. And this year's expansion into more cities really took things to a whole new level. After that, we'll dive into our latest grants announcements, where we announced over $12 million going toward emotional health, nutrition programs, and innovative research. I'll break down where that money is going and why it all matters. And then finally, we'll talk about our Senior Council. It's a group of older adults and high school seniors working together that's really helping to shape the future of the Humana Foundation's work. It's a powerful idea, and I really think that folks will love hearing about it.
All right, going to be a busy day. Sounds like a lot of ground to cover. And I'm really curious about how seniors are helping guide the Foundation's direction. So let's start with Community Day. It's quickly become a highlight of the year, right? This was the second time hosting it. I hear it's grown a lot since last year's kickoff here in Louisville.
It really has. It started in 2024 as a single city event here in Louisville, and now it's a nationwide day of service, and the growth has been incredible. More than 12,000 volunteers. That's Humana, Centerwell employees, community partners, even some nonprofit leaders joined in across Louisville, the Arlington, D.C. area, San Antonio, Fort Lauderdale, and Tampa. And really the goal was simple, just all of us to come together and strengthen the communities where we live and where we work.
It's a big jump from year one. So what kind of projects were people working on?
So many great ones. Here in Louisville, we'll just start here. Volunteers packed thousands of nutrition and care packages over down the street at Louisville Slugger Field with Metro United Way and Pack Hope. We also teamed up with a local artist and the Louisville Visual Art Association to paint a huge mural on the side of Humana's Brook Street Garage. And the theme of the mural really celebrates the two big themes of connection and service, which is what we're all about. We also partnered with the Park Alliance of Louisville, and we cleaned up some local parks. And that was definitely needed, unfortunately, after the flooding earlier this year. So then, moving on down to Florida, teams worked with Feeding South Florida and Feeding Tampa Bay, where they sorted and packed a ton of food for families down there. And then over in Texas, volunteers sorted and packaged food items with the San Antonio Food Bank, which is just a huge resource in that area. And then down in D.C., we prepared meals at the D.C. Central Kitchen for local schools and for community groups.
Sounds like a huge impact across a whole lot of places. So how does this connect to the Foundation's mission?
Well, overall, Humana Community Day is really a part of Humana's broader community impact programming, where really the goal here is we're trying to help employees feel connected while also supporting the local needs of the community. So together, employees here and the Humana Foundation contribute about $51 million each year through volunteering, through donations, and grants. And that day really brings it all to life. It's really just our values and actions.
So with all that in mind, how did this year's event grow to what it became?
Well, after last year's success, where we had 6,000 employees just here in Louisville, we packed 1 million meals last year. We cleaned up parks. We knew just from that the enthusiasm was there. So we really scaled it up for this year. We worked with local partners to meet real needs in the communities that we're helping out, like food security and environmental health, and then just focused on those important areas in those key markets.
So with all those associates involved, all those communities involved, what was the response?
I think it's really safe to say it was overwhelmingly positive. I mean, I know I was charged when I was out there. I felt really inspired to help in our community. People left feeling proud. They felt inspired. They felt connected. And really our CEO of the Humana Foundation, Tiffany Benjamin, who's great, she just said it best. She said, supporting communities is really a core part of who we are. And that day of service really exemplifies our values. So, overall, it's just become a tradition that keeps growing, and we're really already excited for next year.
Let's talk grants. The Foundation just announced this year's awards. What's new this year?
Well, big news. We've awarded over $12 million in programmatic and research grants for 2025. They're in our main focus areas and regions, so they support emotional and nutritional health for seniors, veterans, and kids in the regions of Florida, Louisiana, Texas, and Louisville. And really, before we dive in, I really just want to start by saying thank you to all the organizations that applied for a grant. Our team went through and saw so many thoughtful, community-led projects and we're just really appreciative of the time and the effort that they put into submitting their proposals.
All right, so Chris, where's the focus this year for the grants?
A key focus here is emotional health for seniors. More than 1 in 4 seniors report being socially isolated, so we're really investing in partners and projects that are tackling that. Nationally, there's 3 big grants that stand out that I want to share. One is the National Council on Aging, and it's going to use its $2.5 million grant to help senior centers better spot the signs of mental health challenges and then how to better respond to that more effectively. The second is Volunteers of America. They will use their $1.46 million grant to launch a pilot program in affordable senior housing that really focuses on tackling depression and substance abuse. And the last of these national ones is the Elizabeth Dole Foundation, and it'll use its grant to try out a new program called the Caregiver Mental Wellness Workshop. And what that is it's really designed to give caregivers of veterans the tools and support they need to help manage stress and improve their emotional well-being.
Sounds like a focused approach on the nationwide front there, but what about regionally focused grants?
Yeah, so a lot is happening across a couple of different regions. In Louisville, where more than 40,000 seniors live alone, which is just a staggering number, the Louisville Orchestra, they're going to start a really neat project where they will go on a tour of senior centers and perform for the centers. And then afterwards, as part of the project, they're going to measure the impact of music on the seniors' emotional health. Another partner is the Muhammad Ali Museum, and they'll use their grant to study how practicing self-compassion, just looking after yourself, can help seniors feel less lonely. And all of this will be guided by an advisory committee for the seniors to make sure that the results are really showing and representing the real life experiences that those seniors are going through. And a series of community nutrition efforts. Our partners over at Dare to Care, at Louisville Urban League, and even the Legal Aid Society, they're going to provide everything from food access to education about nutrition and even some legal help for seniors to make sure they're using their SNAP benefits correctly. So I'll stop here, JD, and test your knowledge. We touched on Louisville here for the regions. Where else is the foundation focused in?
Oh, you would do this to me. So, all right. Right off the top of my head, I think we're missing New Orleans and Texas.
Yep, and Florida, exactly.
There it is.
Nice job, sir. So in New Orleans, there's the New Orleans Musicians Clinic, and they're going to help by bringing elder musicians together to play together and then even perform for more than 23,000 of their peers who are also living in isolation. Down in Florida, there's two grants I want to highlight because Florida also has over 200,000 Humana Inc. members that are living with depression. So two that we're focused on is the Alliance for Aging, and they're going to use their grant to create social programs in Miami-Dade that are really specifically designed to help seniors from diverse backgrounds. That's the key here. That helps seniors from diverse backgrounds feel included and connected. And then also in Florida, there's a program with Conversations to Remember, and they're going to do a project to connect students with seniors online, which help create virtual connections across the state.
Okay, well, the stars at night are big and bright deep in the heart of Texas, so what's going on there?
Yes, sir, that leaves Texas. Down in Texas, National Volunteer Caregiving Network, they're going to help volunteers go out and meet and plan fun activities with seniors who are actually unable to travel or to leave their homes. So the volunteers will be going out in the community to meet them where they are at. And those are really just a few of the incredible programs that we're funding. To see our full scope of the grants that we announced, please, I just encourage everybody to visit humanafoundation.org.
That's all powerful, super exciting. So that covered all the programmatic grants. What about the research grants?
Yeah, research is definitely a key focus for the Humana Foundation. We also funded 4 research grants, which totals a little over $1 million, to test new ways to improve seniors' emotional health and nutrition. And then also we want to help to make sure that those findings are shared so that everyone can learn from them. So of the 4, we'll start with UNC Chapel Hill. The research project there, they're going to try out a new digital tool that's going to help underserved seniors prevent diabetes. Here in Kentucky, the University of Kentucky is going to create the first ever data set at the county level to really show how many seniors are struggling with food insecurity. With Harvard Medical School, they're going to test a new AI platform. We all know that AI is the trendy topic nowadays. So they will use an AI tool to help train medical students on how to build stronger connections with their senior patients. And then tying it all together is Academy of Health. Sometimes research can be really deep in the weeds with things. So Academy of Health is going to help organizations translate the findings of that research into actual insights that everybody can understand.
Sounds like a well-rounded approach. Direct support, regional focus, and research.
Exactly. And it's all about building community, advancing equity, and helping people live healthier, more connected lives.
Let's talk about the Senior Council. What is that?
The Senior Council really is how we listen and learn. We started the council in 2023, and it's a group of older adults and high school seniors. They're the senior part of the Senior Council from Texas, Florida, Louisiana, and Louisville here in Kentucky. They meet quarterly to help us identify priorities in their communities and then to share ideas from those communities, which really helps us make sure our work is based on those actual community needs.
So they're actively shaping the foundation's direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, we've got 16 older adults and 8 high school students, and we're in the 3rd year of the council, and this year we're really focused on storytelling. Storytelling and collaboration across each of the regions. We've also added roles like regional storytellers, discussion leaders, and a storytelling lead, which are all supported by our foundation staff.
Sounds like storytelling is big this year.
It is. It really is. And this year we launched a national storytelling initiative through the council. So what's going to happen is each member is interviewing someone from their community about either emotional or nutritional health challenges. So then we'll go through and collect stories from each region, and then we'll use these stories to show what's working, where gaps exist, and how support shows up. We'll offer some coaching on interviewing and then some ethical storytelling guidelines to make sure that everybody we talk to feels heard and respected.
And these stories feed back into the foundation's work?
Yes, they do. They give us insight beyond the data. They'll help us better understand the local needs, to spot patterns and opportunities in those communities that we live in, the communities that we try to serve. And really, it helps us stay grounded in what people in those communities are actually going through.
Through these efforts, what kind of impact have you seen so far?
It's really been incredibly valuable so far through for the first 2 years and now starting the third year of the Senior Council. They've helped us understand emotional health in the communities and really guided our thinking around access and stigma. They've also given us insight on how their areas are experiencing isolation, nutritional issues, and then transportation barriers and more things like that. So really their input is helping us shape how we approach our work, and it helps keep our focus on the lived experience of those people who are out living in those communities.
All right, let's look to the future. As the council keeps growing, what's next?
So our next steps are more support from members of the council. As we keep growing, we'll define clearer roles each year, and then we'll keep creating more opportunities for the members themselves to help contribute to our mission. It's a long-term model that we're definitely committed to.
Well, it's great to hear how central this work is, if that makes sense. So thanks for walking us through it, Chris.
Yeah, JD, glad to share. And just importantly, the council reminds us that when we make time to listen and time to learn, we can build smarter and more connected solutions, especially from those who are in the communities that we're trying to serve.
What's going to tie all this together?
Yeah, JD, it's been a really big few months. We also heard you sing Deep in the Heart of Texas, which I was not expecting, so what a treat. What ties it all together is connection, whether it's volunteering, grant making, or storytelling. It all together supports our mission to advance health equity in both emotional and nutritional health.
You're listening to Foundation Friday with Humana Radio. We are joined now by Communications Director for the Humana Foundation, Marvin Hill. Marvin, hello, sir.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. So I'm happy to have you in the studio. I've been looking forward to this for a really long time. You're an elusive guy, but I've got you here.
Darn it, you got me.
So let's get this started. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, first of all, appreciate you having me here. Appreciate all that Humana Radio and team, appreciate all that you do for the organization, helping us all to shine, keeping us up to date on things. Love it. And I would appreciate that from a communication standpoint.
Well, thank you.
But no, a little bit about me. I'll start with a journalism degree from Indiana University. Go Hoosiers, second in the country as we speak. After that degree, had a full newspaper career. Started as a photojournalist and then a photo and graphics editor. My last newspaper job was at the Chicago Sun-Times before joining Humana. That was my beginning, I would say. Had that communications background in education, wanted to segue into business, into Humana. And so my way of doing that was going back to school, right? So went back and got an MBA to assist my resume and my capabilities in joining Humana. So that's my entry into Humana.
Obvious you would go into communications with that sort of a background. You know how to deliver a message and do so effectively. So you touched on how you got started at Humana. Can you talk a little bit about how you got started with the Humana Foundation and what is your role as communications director?
Yeah, so I'll step back a bit. So first of all, I will celebrate my 21st year at Humana at the end of January 2026.
Congratulations.
Every time I say that, I cannot believe it because throughout my newspaper career, right, I worked at 7 or 8 different newspapers. Every 2 years I moved. All of my kids were born, my 3 kids were born in different states, depending on the newspaper where I worked. So to be at one location for 21 years is awesome.
Moving around like that is typical in the journalism world.
Yes,
You're
it
just
is.
constantly looking for the next big thing. So
Trying to move up the ladder, trying to do bigger and better things.
the stability a company like Humana affords is life-changing, especially for a family man.
Yeah. So 21 years, right? And I have been blessed to have had a few different careers at Humana. When I joined Humana, I worked in human resources, talent acquisition specifically, helped to build and lead a college recruiting program back in the day called Infusion. So I recruited top MBA students and undergrads from across the country to come and work for Humana. So that was a great time, got to see many different wonderful campuses, and business schools across the country. And even in that work, I was communicating and selling, right? And promoting Humana. So the thread goes throughout, all of my experiences with Humana. I did some operations recruiting as well, helped to source and hire customer service agents to support our Medicare operations in Tampa. So started in HR, but then moved back to my roots in communications and joined corporate communications, where I have done many things. So from a communications and media and PR perspective, I have supported Medicare and Medicaid, supported media relations from a regional or state perspective, supported and worked PR within our sponsorship areas, like with the National Senior Games. So I've done a lot of things, great things, wonderful opportunities, great learning opportunities for me in communications. And now I'm at the Humana Foundation.
You certainly made your way through the entire breadth of the communications apparatus at Humana.
Yes, indeed.
I want to talk about the Humana Foundation a little bit if we could. They recently underwent, you recently underwent a strategy refresh. Can you tell me, what does relaunching Humana Foundation and your brand actually mean?
Boy, that was some great experience to have, some great learnings. I've never worked for a startup, but in coming on board with the foundation at that time really gave me an opportunity to work in a startup environment, right? So first, I will give a nod and great reverence and respect for Tiffany Benjamin, our CEO. She allowed me to sit at the table in building out the strategy for the Humana Foundation, right? So I'm the communications guy. I'm not technically a leader, right, that reports to her, right? I support communications, but she allowed me to sit at the table with her and the leadership within the foundation to help build out this strategy, right? So after that strategy was confirmed, and by the way, that was a great exercise in looking out at the landscape to see what issues are facing our communities, what barriers are in the way of people achieving their best health. And after going through that exercise, then we developed a true, simple, easy to understand strategy in support of the communities that we serve.
It had to be incredibly validating to your long resume of success to be included in that conversation. You want to talk a little bit more about that and how you got started?
Yeah, so as a communications professional working in corporate communications, I had worked with the foundation, working with the foundation back then, 10 years ago, was ad hoc, right? So if the foundation had something happening, hey, we have a press release we need to get out for the foundation, they would choose someone, usually the person connected to the Louisville market, right, to do that work. So with me now being anchored with the Humana Foundation is a new thing for sure, and just an amazing opportunity. I got started with the foundation on a full-time basis, I would say. My leader, Kelly Murphy, pulled me aside one day and said, hey, I've got a stretch assignment for you. Stretch meaning, hey, keep on doing what you're doing in your day-to-day duties.
We now want you to do more.
We now want you to do this. And that was creating a video to commemorate the 40th anniversary of the Humana Foundation while carrying out my day-to-day duties, otherwise brought people together, reached back into the history of Humana in every way I could from a people, document, content perspective, and helped to build out this 40th anniversary video, which is out on our website today at humanafoundation.org. If you look at our history, you can see that video. But that was kind of my stretch, right, to do the work, to get acclimated into the work of the foundation. And I've been happy and excited ever since in the great work that we do.
Marvin, how do you define what the Humana Foundation is all about? And what does it take to build a nationally recognized foundation brand? I have to think that's formidable.
Yeah, and we've come a long way in a short period of time, which is amazing and exciting at the same time. But when we set out to build the strategy and the mission of the Humana Foundation, Tiffany wanted that strategy and focus to be simplified, easy to understand, that would give the foundation the opportunity to focus, right? So you can't boil the ocean, right? Everybody's heard that phrase. See, but you have to find those things that are relevant, that make sense for you and your team, for the organization. You think about where Humana Inc. is across the country and the markets that it serves from a business perspective. How do we complement that, right, to impact communities in a great way? The defining perspective for the Humana Foundation, technically the work is centered on health equity, right? So advancing equitable access and outcomes for diverse communities by eliminating the social and structural barriers to good health and healthcare through evidence-based interventions and solutions, right? But quite simply said, we focus on making health fair for everyone, right? Removing those barriers that get in the way of people who need assistance and help and good health the most. So that's what the foundation does every day, right? So breaking down those barriers, helping people to achieve their best health, right? That's the mission of Humana Inc., is helping people to achieve their best health. And Inc. does that in many different ways from a patient perspective. But with the foundation, right, it's us, being in community, listening to the needs of people, right? And then making decisions around how we can execute and roll out our resources to help people to live their best lives.
It's important work because I don't think a lot of people understand the disparities that exist there. What you guys are doing is incredibly important.
Yeah. When you say disparities, you think about disaster.
Yeah.
And you think about a hurricane, tornado, you had a recent government shutdown, right? When those things happen, there are people out there, underserved communities out there, who are already having issues, who already have massive barriers before disaster happens. So it's in keeping with those people, right? In making sure that, we can help them to recover, help them to build, and just to make a great life for themselves as much as we can, as quickly as possible. So
if you think about it quite simply, if you have trouble reading, doctor's orders and it goes beyond that, just knowing where to go for care and now factor in a natural disaster or a government shutdown, it compounds one on top of one another.
I mean, it's unimaginable. If you can imagine having to navigate the healthcare system, in normal times, right? But then you have a big disaster that happens and you're trying to rebuild your home and work from a large center that's in your community, right? And not from the comfort of your home. I mean, it's tough.
Turns your life upside down. Yeah. Marvin, from a communications point of view, and I have to think that you draw on some of your experiences from newspaper in doing what you do every day. And I want to get into that in just a little bit, but what is the communications team's mission or goals in your perspective?
So my chief role is to protect and to promote, right, the work of the foundation. So I am a protector of this brand that I have worked so hard to build. I don't do that alone. I have a great assist from a gentleman named Chris Robinson, who does excellent work, on behalf of the foundation as well. So it's our job to protect the organization, to promote the work of the foundation, to protect and support our grantees, right? So we have these grantees, these organizations that we give money to from creating a healthy emotional perspective, so with mental health, as well as through nutrition support, right? So we give this money to organizations, and it's my role, the folks who work with me, it's up to us to help promote that work, to support the nonprofits in that, right? To communicate about our pledges and gifts to their organization, to ensure that if they want to communicate about our work together, that we're right there with them and helping and supporting them. But it's about protecting the brand, and I take that very seriously. Another part of my role is our brand. I've worked hard to build this warm, approachable brand. If you look at our brand colors, if you go out to our website and look at who we are, right, it'll tell you something about who we are. Those warm colors, all those things that we've built, I take that seriously. I often think about, I love team sports. And I'll use my Indiana Hoosiers as an example.
Number 2 in the nation.
Number 2 in the nation. So, when you think about that team, what do you see? They're all wearing the same color.
They are.
Right? They're all speaking from the same Bible, the same book of messaging.
All running in the same direction.
They're all running. I love it. They're all running in the same direction, right? So that's what I see in my role with the foundation, is making sure that the staff, the team, that we're all running in the same direction. We're all speaking from the same message book, all in understanding and in support of the mission.
I want to draw on that similarity you drew right there. The Indiana Hoosiers, they measure success by wins and losses, points on the board. You're in a communications role where you're trying to reach people and deliver messages. How do you measure success?
Like with anything else in business and in life, you measure, right? You look at metrics, right? To figure out, right, if what you're doing is making a difference, is moving in the right direction, right? So we do that through measuring our social media engagement for sure. Share of voice is very important to us, right? So when you look at how much our brand is being talked about compared to other foundations in our space, right? So how are we doing versus Elevance, versus the foundation that's connected to United Health? Right? How are people talking about the announcements and the work that they do? Are they talking about it more than they talk about the Humana Foundation, right? So we're continuously looking at the landscape, looking at those metrics and measuring where we fit. And with that, we can make determinations on how we move forward, or how we stop doing one thing and start doing another thing, how we turn up the volume on social media versus another channel of communications. So
why is communication so important to these foundations?
Of course, communications is important in all environments, in life and in business, right? But, in order for the Humana Foundation to advance its mission, we've got to inspire people, right? We've got to inspire our nonprofits to get out there and to do the work that we have charged them to do, that they promised they would do, right? So we have to inspire them. We have to inspire people who love those nonprofits, who may not know about those nonprofits, right? We got to inspire people to learn their story, to connect with them. That gives them more eyes, more dollars, right? More support. Communications has to, in my role, and again, the people whom I work with, right? We have to inspire our board. Right? The board has a great presence and place, around what we do every day. So we've got to inspire the board. We've got to inspire Humana Associates. Shout out to Humana Associates, right, who are always there to support the Humana Foundation in its work, that support the Humana Foundation in times of disaster. When we announce a company match, associates step up. You think about Community Day. Humana Associates are always stepping up to help and support our communities. And with that, and knowing that, I have to do a great job of keeping the story out there, keeping the story relevant, building inspiration, sharing knowledge, giving people an opportunity to give feedback. So communications has a great role, and it's a lever that you have to continuously tweak depending on what's happening in the world, in the marketplace, and Lord knows things have been interesting.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. If nothing else, the world is changing, and drastically, day by day, and even more so month by month and year by year. So how is that affecting the way that you do what you do with communications for the Humana Foundation?
I would say beyond the last 6 months, a year, or whatever time frame you name, things will always change. The world is going to always change, right?
It's the only constant.
Yeah, the only constant is change at Humana, change in your personal life, right? Change in the world. So from a communications perspective, a few of the most important considerations in communications are, one, you got to know your audience. You have to know who you're speaking to. Secondly is understanding the environment. So what that means, if things are changing, here or there or anywhere. You have to stay attuned to those changes. So it's my responsibility to constantly, consistently gauge the changes that are happening in Louisville, in Kentucky, in Washington, in philanthropy. A part of being a communicator is being curious, being process-oriented, all in support of looking out over the landscape to see what people are thinking about, talking about, need, you name it, right? So it's just keeping your ear to the ground, if you will, to keep track of the things that are changing that might impact the way you communicate with people, the words you might say, the words you might not say. So it's just a matter of keeping your ear to the ground and listening. And I put an emphasis on that word because that's one of the number one tenets of who the Humana Foundation is about. It's about listening to our communities, right? Listening to the people that we serve. In times of disaster, just don't run in and give money, right? You step back, you listen to the organizations that are on the ground, who are connected to the people who are hurting. Once you get that intelligence, then you make a decision around what to do, how to support, how to help, or what not to do. So I just think from in times of change, you got to listen and just be prepared to pivot, based on what's happening.
I want to talk accolades for a moment because I heard you recently won an award for your work. So congratulations, first of all. Tell me about that award and what it means to you.
Boy, 2025 has been a fantastic year. The award is PR Daily's 2025 Nonprofit Communications Award.
Sounds big.
And I received the Professional of the Year.
Look at that.
Amazing.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much. Truly proud to receive that honor. And I will say that myself and the Humana Foundation, we were honorable mentions in the visual storytelling and the thought leadership categories as well.
I'm intrigued.
So visual storytelling is just that, right? So as a part of my inspiring associates, inspiring the board, inspiring the general public about our work, I work with a team of folks to build videos. You look at social media, what do you see? You see video.
Videos.
So I have, for this particular category, did a story about a grandmother who lives in Louisiana who is raising her 4 grandsons. I mean,
that's a lot of work.
When you say that, it just, wow, to be a grandmother and raising 4 grandsons.
Absolutely.
Is an amazing feat. And I got to see it up close and personal and built a video around it. So that was the video that was recognized in that category.
I can imagine that was an incredible story to not only see the final product, but to actually be sitting there with that woman and talking about her life.
Yeah, it was an amazing story. And, the way that she, now has care for her grandsons, the story isn't a happy one at all. But just to experience that, to see her example absolutely inspired me as an individual. And as I capture those things, I try to, one, step out of the way and let her tell the story, right? So I try to be a fly on the wall, if you will, as I'm there capturing the story.
Yeah.
But, I want people to see what I see. I want the people that view my content, those videos, to see exactly what I see. And in that case, boy, it was a powerful story around her life, right? And around her efforts in raising these boys in a way that gives her the opportunity to serve them healthy foods, right? So if you can imagine raising those boys, that alone is a big lift, but being focused on giving them healthy foods, giving them opportunities to learn and grow, right? So it was a really great story. So that was the visual storytelling category.
And what was the other category?
The other was thought leadership. And that was a piece focused on disaster. And that the crux of the story was that with most disasters, there are people who are impacted who were already underserved, already have challenges. So disasters don't necessarily start with the disaster, if that makes sense.
It comes afterward.
Yeah. So it was a great piece that we did on that. So those were the honorable mentions, just super proud. And what those awards say to me, those awards were a signal, right? A signal that the work that we're doing, the work that I do day to day, that we're on the right track, right? So we're on the right track in supporting our mission, and to have an organization, to have someone else outside of us to validate that, boy, that's good stuff. Makes me proud of myself, makes me proud of the work that we do, makes me proud around the impact that we have with people every day. So,
Well, speaking of the work you do, how does this award connect to the work that the foundation is doing?
I guess any award that I receive or the organization receives, it's a signal. It's a manifestation of the strategy. It's a manifestation of every grant that we make, in this case, in 2024 and 2025. But it's a recognition of all the things that you do. You know, every grant you make to an organization, every pledge you give in times of need. It's just a recognition and signal around the things that you do every day, right? And all those things that you do every single day in my role as a person supporting Tiffany Benjamin and the Humana Foundation, all those things we do every day add up to things. And those things can either be award-winning, impactful in communities, or otherwise. If I have anything to do with it, it's going to be impactful. It's going to be excellent. Most importantly, helpful to the people who need it most.
Well, it's also a validation of the work that not only you, but the foundation as a whole is doing.
Absolutely.
It's just that here, you guys are doing excellent work. Here's proof of that.
Yep, absolutely.
What's next for communications at the Humana Foundation?
Quite simply, staying the course with our strategy. So 2025 has been about protecting the strategy. The foundation advances health equity. That word equity isn't necessarily a popular word in some circles, but the Humana Foundation is still committed to that word, still committed to our strategy of advancing health equity. So staying grounded in that strategy and moving in the right direction in support of that, while at the same time continuing to watch out in the landscape of things to help pivot if need be, and to help support our grantees, right? So with all of the things that have happened in the world around equity, around philanthropy and support of nonprofits, right? As the landscape changes, I have to be there, the foundation has to be there to help our nonprofit partners through it. So if it's stepping back and giving them more space to react to things, to shore up their strategy, mission, staffing, and all the things that they need to do, right? It's about me helping to communicate that, hey, the Humana Foundation is with you during this time. You know, we're supportive of you, ensuring that your strategy, that your staff, that your mission is intact. So it's staying the course, right? And just being there for the people that we serve, connecting even more closely with Humana associates. Right now, more than ever, the Humana Foundation needs the partnership and the togetherness of our associates. So we'll be connecting even more closely with associates and helping to drive change in our communities and just continue to protect the brand, enhance Humana Inc. in all ways that we can as well.
It sounds like a focused but agile approach, and I think that's proper for the time we're in right now.
Love it. Yep.
So how do you see the foundation's communications growing moving forward?
I would say with most things, technology. You know, technology is advancing. AI is advancing so quickly. And we have already been leveraging AI in the work that we do. We've been dipping our toe into the technology, but using it more and more. But I see in our future definitely being responsible in the way that we leverage technology, AI. So that's definitely one thing that I would mention, as well as, again, rallying our associates to partner with us in the work. You know, sometimes it takes more than a foundation. It takes more than a company. It takes more than a nonprofit. It takes a coalition, right? It takes a coalition of people that come together to make things happen, to build support. So I think with the Humana Foundation and the way we, brand and promote ourselves, that will be in a way that's open, right, and supportive of Humana Associates and the company and our partners out in the community, right, so that we can keep driving change.
I can tell you from a personal perspective, based on what I've seen in the short time that I've been here at Humana, which is about 4 years going on 5, I think, you and the work that the Humana Foundation is doing has done an incredible job of galvanizing not just the associate enterprise here, but also the community in which we live. I've never seen so many people, to harken back on something we said earlier in the conversation, but so many people run in the same direction for a single cause. So I just want to give you some accolades for that. I think what you guys are doing is incredible work.
Well, I will say thank you, and I won't take that totally on myself. we'll give it to the staff and the CEO and Humana Associates, right? All of us who, have a heart for service, a heart for our communities. Again, from my standpoint in the work that I do every day, if I can inspire myself, inspire us all to get out there and do it more and to do it with more heart, right? And to expand that, I will have done well.
Marvin Hill, Communications Director with the Humana Foundation. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.